Hey guys, welcome back to City Skylines. Today I'm commentating over one of my favorite time lapses really. Not that it matters that much, but it's just something which I figured I'd introduce this video with very shortly because I'm gonna work on a new town on the outskirts, or pretty far away actually from the large city in this map. And it's also a little bit smaller than the town which I built before, the last town I built that is, which means that I can actually do nearly the entirety of making this town in one 20-minute video, which is pretty cool, and one 20-minute video that is, without any of the chores of having to make farms or any of the boring filler parts. And the majority of this video is just going to be just about laying out the town and the direct area around it and some smaller parts of it. Although at the end of this video I'll also very shortly go into adding some flower fields on the outside of the town, just because it's something that's pretty damn Dutch and I wanted to try and mess around with it. It's actually pretty fitting for this time of year too. But yeah, to basically talk about the town, it's located around this very small regional highway over here, which I more or less needed in this case, given how many cars there will be coming and going to this town, and given that it's a pretty important connection between two highways that I have at the moment as well. But aside from that, there will basically just be one entrance road to the town, so it is going to be pretty traffic jammy at some point in the future, but I just figured this would be the most realistic way of doing it, looking from a, well, realistic Dutch perspective really. And I also just wanted to try that quick intersection there with the asymmetrical ramps, and have this small area as you come into the town where there's still a bit of commercial and retail and industrial buildings before you actually get into the town itself, which is a little bit further down the road, where I can keep the town more or less mostly clean of the industrial zones and just keep it to just row houses and a very small old town center, which turned out to be one of my favorites, but it's also something that I'll get back to in the next episode actually, to add extra detailing to it. The general area is very heavily inspired by the general area in Noord-Brabant, which is the area in the Netherlands where like all of the different rivers go, and there's a bunch of different rivers and all sorts of islands between them, and it's a pretty swampy area, and it's just an area which I took quite some inspiration for this city. And most of all, I took inspiration from a town called Aalburg, which is really random. Just I figured a town which would work alongside the river over here. But also the area around it is what I took a lot of inspiration from. So there's quite a lot of rivers in this part of the map in City Skylines as well. And I wanted to also keep it quite open, so I wanted to have some large floodplains alongside the rivers, which is an interesting thing to talk about. I did get some comments in some of my videos too about the fact that I should probably keep in mind more of the waterworks in the Netherlands and some of the things that are done to at least make sure that rivers don't flood and things like that. And most importantly, what I really wanted to get in here are some floodplains, just some larger grassy areas alongside the rivers of more or less flat land where the river can at least flood if the water level is really high, but not flood the city. So basically those floodplains will just be kept mostly empty without any buildings, except for some grassy plains for cattle and things like that, and some football fields, because I did find that quite often the floodplains are actually littered with football fields. So I guess people don't really care about football that much, and I figured I could also just have the local football club of this town in the floodplains as well. And I also wanted to get the two dikes, because historically there are two dikes around rivers. There's the, I think I got that right, and I don't know if that's a good literal translation, but there's the summer dike, which is the very small one, which is right next to the river. Then you have the sort of flood plain-ish flat area, and then you have another dike, which is supposedly the winter dike. I really hope I didn't actually mess the two up there. Which is the larger dike, which actually saves the rest of the land from flooding. And that's just something that I quickly wanted to get in here. Though there are some other things as well. There are some designated areas in the Netherlands, like some polders, that are meant to be flooded in case that the water level rises so high that there's high flood risks in very densely populated areas. So people have just decided to then break the dikes in less populated areas and just let those people be fucked. Just because if they didn't do that, then more people would be fucked. So it's very utilistic in that way, which is something which I might also think about, but it's definitely not really a big concern. I just wanted to make sure that the river banks around here would look sort of, well, resembling the Dutch river banks as you see alongside this area, which I made it inspired by. So to actually go into the town itself, it's the idea for the town is more or less that I have these lines, these straight roads which cut straight through this peninsula that this town is really located on. So there are these horizontal roads which are all running in a parallel way through this peninsula, and I wanted to fill in the town sort of in between these roads, so hence also why it has that bit of a square-ish shape. And also what I wanted to keep in mind is that it has sort of grown in very small developments over time. So you can see the houses on the right are really very new, and I'm not going to really even add too much foliage alongside them. There's also that small little English villa kind of street with just a couple of new houses around it. And then as you go to the left of your screen at the moment, I'm not entirely sure if that's north, south, east or west, the houses get, well, pretty much gradually older and you come closer to the center of the city. And this is also more or less reflected in the layout of the town, where this part is still somewhat old. I would have thought just about 70s, 80s with some houses around it, but the majority of this sort of more square and simple layout is really some of those older 50s, 60s types of red roof houses which you commonly see in neighborhoods like that. And then the center of the city is gonna have less straight and grid-like roads and just be a small old center of the city with old houses and some more curvy roads here and there. So yeah, I did try to get some degree of having different neighborhoods with not just different housing styles but also different road layouts within this small town, but of course not make the different neighborhoods too large, because I would like the town to actually have grown just by little segments over time. So yeah, that's more or less the plan for this town. Now this actually leaves me a bit of time, as I'm just doing these standard sort of red roof row houses as you see them in neighborhoods like this all the time, to actually get back to what I wanted to talk about in this commentary, because truth be told, I didn't actually prepare this commentary as much as I usually do. I didn't make a topic list for this. I just sort of watched the time-lapse and opened up the comment section of my last City Skylines video, because I didn't quite get as much time, or barely any time, to reply to comments as I usually want to do. I do try to reply to more comments at least than what I've usually, than what I've done in episode 19, where I barely replied to anything, but there are still some things that I definitely want to address. There were many people worrying about how much I critique my stuff. It's been that way for a very long time and I should probably do something about it by now. But I do want to say about the city that I definitely don't think it's bad myself, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I just think I can do better. Not just because I've learned, but also because new assets have come out and it's simply not, they're simply not compatible with this file. It's still got traffic++, which I need to use, fine road heights and all sorts of old things where there's so much more new stuff that I want to try and just is more fun for me. So I really just want to start something new sometime soon. And that said though, I still have this episode, the next episode, and episode 22, but that's all I have at the moment. I'm probably still gonna record one more episode of wrapping stuff up a little bit, and another video which I got many comments asking about, of whether I would actually show off the city in a sort of cinematic way or make an overview of the city in any way, and I definitely do want to do it. I want to make a cinematic shots video, not really go over the city myself and explain things. This is also something I might do, but like my final video, I would love to make a more cinematic video just with music, just showing off the best shots of the city. And if I still want to give a small overview of the city with my thoughts and commentate it, I think I'll just do that in episode 23. as it's sort of more or less wrapped up to a somewhat finished state that I can still go over the entire city, show what it looks like altogether and what the ideas behind things are. So I'll definitely still get back to that and wrap up the city in a nice way, because I definitely don't want to leave it hanging. But I'm not ending the series in the middle of it, at least. I don't feel like I should. I just want to wrap it up nicely and move on to something that, truth be told, I just want to try a little bit more. I've also taken quite a break from City Skylines and haven't really done much in it lately, and I'm just really looking for inspirations and almost the idea that I really want to play it myself again. Because truth be told, I'm not recording videos just to record videos, but the most important thing to me still is that I just play it for fun, obviously, and I'm not going to really play it if I don't have any good ideas or, well, the urge to really play it. So yeah, that's really all about that. So I'll definitely get back to this series. I'm not gonna leave it just bleed to death. But I do want to get into some other stuff. It's basically also a TLDR version of what I've said in the last video. And also though, what I didn't say in the last video, I did say that I would try some new stuff, but I got a number of comments actually if I would do something similar to Doha in Qatar, and it was really funny because that's one of the things that I'm actually planning. I would love to make an economic city like Tunisia is making, or some of the newer neighborhoods in Doha or Dubai. Things like that is just something that I would want to try. It's not necessarily that I'm a huge fan of them in real life, it's just something that I haven't really seen in City Skylines yet, and I feel it should be pretty feasible. But I also might just make a small skiing town, or a new Dutch town at some point in the future. But I still can't really say too much about it, just because I still have to decide on what I'm going to do, and I still want to wrap this up. So yeah, those are all the plans for that. And now back to the city for a little bit. I wanted to have another neighborhood over here, which is really one of those 70s, 80s cauliflower type neighborhoods. It's nothing really too special, and it's a really small cauliflower, if anything. But it's just something which I figured would be a realistic addition to the city. And then, well, to the top of the screen, underneath crushed Jerby in this case, I have the older part of the town, which is mostly one shopping street with two smaller streets on the side, which I'll still get back to and add more detailing to. But this was really the sort of core layouts that I wanted to make in this episode, to at least know how I would go about laying it out and how it all fits with the rest of the town here. So yeah, that's everything when it comes to that. Though in general, the approach to making this town is very similar to the last one I made. It's just a different shape and a different size and just a slightly different town. And much like the center of the city also, I wanted to have some actual brick roads instead of just having, well, some of these awkward streets. One of the things also I find is that the streets in the game are very American, like they're really based on American suburb type roads or grid type roads, and you don't really have these shopping streets as you very usually see them in Europe. There aren't really any streets with very narrow street parts and very wide sidewalks or things like that, and it's definitely something that I try to overcome by just putting these textures on them. And it's also something that I know some of the modders are actually working on, but at the moment it's not in the game yet, so something to work around basically. But it's one of those, yeah, just one of those issues that I wanted to keep in mind, and one of the reasons why I really want to use these textures, because I feel like if I use the roads the way they are right now, it would not look as European and as much of a small city center as I would like it to be. So the next thing I want to add around here is some houses alongside the dike, and also add some simple foliage on the floodplains and the dike as well. It's not something that I really had any idea behind. I just looked at many of them in real life and figured I generally just wanted to have some trees alongside the road on the dike and a couple of trees in the floodplains, and at least make them look a little bit more interesting than just empty grass with some grass patches. This is also something that I may want to like come back to when I start a new city, because one of the reasons that I feel I could do something better than the city I have at the moment, aside from trying to not voice crack in my videos, is that the city is really built as a sort of large-scale model area, but it's not so much focused on the smaller scene, so I didn't want to get into decorating certain fields with grass patches and small flowers, because it's more about the grander scheme of things. And this is actually something I would like to perhaps not do in the next city, but really focus on really small details rather than trying to get a really large, sort of realistic area going, because what I sort of feel I lack in this city, not necessarily everywhere, but in general I would like to do more, is focus on the smaller scenes and making those picturesque areas, which is something that I didn't get as much. And you can probably tell by the time-lapse as well, since I build a lot of things from a far-away aerial perspective rather than zooming out to get every single detail perfectly. It's more designed from, well, yeah, an aerial perspective in general than trying to make it look good in the details and from the ground up, which doesn't mean that I try to make the city look like one of these top-down designed cities, because that's definitely not something that I like doing, but I try to get a large scale, and I might want to make the scale a bit smaller for future cities, just so I can put more effort into detailing. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to say as well. Oh, and I also wanted to have a quick cemetery, even though it's just a really simple one over here, and a quick small hospital alongside the side of the town, because I just felt that would fit, and I, well, practically also really needed one as well. So these are going to not be the farm fields, but some of the flower fields, which turned out to be one of the worst ideas I've ever had, and I still don't know why exactly I did it, but it was basically a pretty long and painful time of getting flowers to be in an exact straight line. I also don't have an auto clicker or a way to get my mouse to get straight, so this was just this just took a lot of patience, and you can probably see too that some of these lines are just slightly not really great generally. So yeah, that's something that I might want to say about it too. Now to actually return to a couple of comments, actually, there was also one comment which was quite funny, saying you cannot stop this series before you have an airport. Well, I can, really, but maybe I won't. I've been saying that I would add an airport to this town for quite a while now, and I think a very small regional airport, like, I'm not going to go into anything big, I'm not going to go into anything like a national airport, but just a small airport as you see around areas like this, just for, well, not really flights for passengers, but just for the sport of it, is something that I might want to get into, and just build a very small airport over here. But as much as I would like to do so, I'm not going to build a huge airport. I think that's just something more realistically left for a different theme and for a different city at some point in the future. I also had multiple suggestions actually, and this has been going on for a while, but I thought it would be funny to talk about in a video that so many people ask me to flood the city and make a cool video of that, because it's the Netherlands, I suppose, and it's what's more funny than seeing the Netherlands be flooded, I guess. So yeah, I might actually do it, and I think it's actually a pretty cool idea. At least from an interesting perspective, that it's really interesting to see how it would work, of course, and that it's just realistically probably also something that's stereotypically pretty known for Holland. So I might actually flood it and get that into the final cinematic shots, just for how cool I hope the shots will look. I don't really have any great expectations of how it's gonna look, so I'm only going to really feature it if it's gonna be something interesting and if I can get it to work really well. But I might actually do it, because it really seems like a fun idea and I at least want to try it. I obviously also get many comments asking if I can share the city and put it up for download, and it's something which I've been thinking about for a really long time too. It's just something which I'm not entirely sure if I'll do it, because it'll be an absolutely awful job to try and get this map to work on other computers, and you'll need many outdated mods and a ridiculous list of assets, and I didn't update it for the last 2 weeks or so, so it's also a little outdated. So I'm not entirely sure how well that's gonna work out, but I might do it. But keep in mind, I might just not do it, not because I want to keep the file away from everyone, but just because it's so hard to make it work and I'd rather not release it than release it and have most people not even be able to open it and just get all of these issues with trying to get it to work on other people's PCs, which is something that I've had troubles with Rollercoaster Tycoon 3 in the past, and I don't really want to repeat. But yeah, that's basically it. I'm running out of time-lapse, so thank you guys for watching this episode, and doei.